Hello and welcome to Farm Journal Live. I'm editor Clinton Griffiths here from our Farm Journal newsroom in northern Indiana as we continue to bring the latest with regards to the coronavirus outbreak and its impact on agriculture. Today we begin with a little bit of market news. Grain markets up in midday trade. Livestock markets starting the day limit up as even more processing facilities announce plans to slow or limit production. Tyson Foods, their plant in Columbus Junction, Iowa, suspended operations for a week now. That's after more than 24 cases of the virus were confirmed at that facility. The Tyson CEO is saying the company was diverting the livestock supplies scheduled for delivery to the facility to some of the company's other pork plants in the region. The facility kills about 10,000 pigs a day. That's about 2% of the country's total slaughter capacity. And 4 workers have tested positive for the virus at the Archer Daniels Midland Corn Processing Facility in Clinton, Iowa. Reuters reporting the employees and those they have come in contact with are under quarantine. The facility is also being deep cleaned. A company spokesperson saying that right now they are continuing to keep operations going at the plant with some staffing adjustments. Poet has announced plans to idle production at its bioprocessing facilities in 3 locations. Those include biorefineries at Chancellor, South Dakota, Ashton, and Coon Rapids, Iowa. The company also saying it's delaying the startup of a plant at Shelbyville, Indiana. Leaders saying fuel demand has fallen off by half, and on an annual basis that equates to about 7 to 8 billion gallons lost of ethanol demand. Growth Energy saying nearly half of America's biofuel production could soon be offline. And global dairy prices are slightly higher this morning. The global dairy trade auction in New Zealand seeing butter prices up 4.5%, whole milk powder climbing about 2%. This is U.S. dairy prices have fallen in recent weeks. Our partners over at Farm Journal Milk reporting that late Monday night, the National Milk Producers Federation and the International Dairy Foods Association submitting to USDA a joint plan to confront the COVID-19 dairy crisis. The proposal broken into 3 categories: producer initiatives, processor initiatives, and consumer initiatives. Now, on that producer initiative side, the groups are proposing all producers cut production by 10% from a March 2020 baseline. The voluntary reduction program would then pay $3 per hundred on the remaining 90% through September should the average Class 3 or 4 price stay below $16. It would also ensure producers are paid for milk that has been dumped through June, and it calls for the Dairy Margin Coverage Program enrollment to be reopened and retroactive. With so much happening around farm country right now, we've had a lot of stress out there. We've watched commodity prices fall. We've seen across the board impacts not only to our personal lives, but to the lives of our friends and family. We're bringing up now Derek Talkington. He's the owner and CEO of Blackbird Cooperative. It's a community development firm focused on educating the public on mental health and addiction issues. He's also the host of Chasing Sanity podcast. And Derek and I, we go back quite a ways. And Derek, I know at one point in your life you were living in New Orleans when Hurricane Katrina hit, and you want to talk about changing your trajectory at that point.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely, man. Anytime we experience a major disruption in our life, more than anything, it tests our resiliency. It tests all of the skills that we've built up, and it tests our ability to kind of bounce back in lots of different areas, but particularly emotionally.
Yeah, one of the things that farmers and ranchers, they've been dealing with, a lot of stress from bad weather to now COVID-19, falling prices. Are there any tips for dealing with this stress on a personal level from somebody that spends each and every day talking to folks about, keeping themselves mentally healthy?
Yeah, absolutely, Clinton. I used a really specific word just a second ago, and that word's resiliency. A big part of staying adaptable emotionally and managing our stress effectively, unfortunately, has to be done on the preventative side of any type of crisis. I think more than anything, what's happening right now serves as a really good reminder that we need to be better prepared emotionally for things that are going to be happening in our lives. That usually involves having or creating a really good emotional management and stress management plan and maintaining that on a day-to-day basis when things are good. That way we've got those skills in place and we've got that support system already in place. What's happening now is we're finding ourselves here in the middle of the crisis, in the midst of all this madness, and we're really kind of having to do some damage control because we didn't step into this quite as emotionally prepared maybe as we should have been. But I think that there's still some really good and really positive things that we can be doing to manage that stress and to cope with the anxieties of what's happening with the COVID-19 crisis. First is we have to make sure that people are communicating with their support system. The number one thing we want to do when we experience emotional problems is step back into a dark corner, not talk about those, try to hide those from the people in our community and from the people that we love. And that is even more damaging than what we're experiencing emotionally. So we've got to make sure that we're communicating with our support system, our family members, our friends, most importantly, that community network that surrounds all of us, especially in the farmer and rancher world. Community is important. Use that community, communicate with that community, right? The other thing I tell all my clients that I meet with every day is take a really balanced and holistic approach to managing stress. Remember that we've got to care for ourselves physically. We've got to maintain at least some sort of kind of healthy diet and consume some healthy foods. We've got to take walks. We've got to continue to exercise. Don't let the emotional stress, don't let the things that are happening push us away from taking care of ourselves physically. What we're going through physically and what we're going through emotionally are really closely tied together. I think it's really important for people right now to plug in, engage as much as possible in pro-social behaviors. That's really difficult right now amidst the isolation and the social distancing. But it's important to stay informed. It's important to watch programs like this and get some of the facts. It's important to use that technology to FaceTime with loved ones and to have Zoom Bible studies or community meetings, and whatever we can do. So stay plugged in as much as possible. But there's some tension there because my next piece of advice was to make sure that we unplug, right? We have to find that tension and that balance between staying connected, but not overwhelming ourselves with information and not constantly looking at news feeds and watching the news. Unplug, use this as an opportunity to spend time with family and really kind of mentally and socially fall back on our value systems. Remember what things are really important to us in life. Remember our values, remember to pursue those relationships and pursue things that we would normally be pursuing when we have free time, but use those to kind of create that tension between plugging in and unplugging.
Derek, one of the things that, I hear what you're saying, and a lot of what you're saying is, okay, how do I deal with this personally? But the folks around us are dealing with it also, and those relationships that we have, not obviously with ourselves and our loved ones, but with other people can be stressed. Is there any advice there in kind of dealing with some of the relationships that are outside of our circle that we may come across, and people always react differently to these kind of situations?
Yeah, absolutely, Clinton. I think this is a really important question. We need to always be sure that we are people of much grace, right? We've got to understand that many of us are struggling right now. Many of us are hurting. Lots of us are scared, stressed, and worried. All of this emotional stress makes it really easy for people to come at other people crossways, for all of that emotional stress to come out sideways in ways that we didn't intend it to. And when that happens in our relationships, we need to meet that behavior with some grace and some willingness to understand, that, hey, maybe this attitude that I'm receiving from this person, maybe this negativity isn't about me at all. Maybe it's about what they're dealing with, and I can be gracious, I can respect that. Most important, I can listen, right? Most of us feel better when someone in our life simply asks us how we're doing and is willing to sincerely listen, right? Even if they don't have answers to what we're going through, having someone that can listen really helps lift that emotional burden.
Derek, one of the other things, and of course we don't talk a lot about it in agriculture and in the farming community, but it's a reality that we've seen over the last couple of years, given the problems we've had with prices, the stress in different sectors of our industry. And that is, what are the warning signs we need to be looking out for our friends and our family and our acquaintances if we're worried about depression or even worse?
Yeah, obviously our greatest fear in this conversation, Clinton, is losing a loved one to suicide. I think that's what's on the back of everybody's mind when we're talking about severe depression and we're talking about some of the problems that we've encountered over the last few years and some of the problems that farmers and ranchers have encountered over the last few years, as kind of me and you have talked through that. There's no single cause of suicide or suicidal thoughts. It happens across a spectrum of reasons, and it happens to lots of different types of people. The number one thing that we've got to remember to do is talk about it, right? way too often we treat suicide like it's some sort of four-letter word or taboo topic, and we don't want to bring it up. I think our fear is that if we talk about it in some way, we think that we're going to push someone towards that thinking or towards that behavior. And it's really the exact opposite. When we talk about suicide, when we talk about somebody experiencing suicidal thoughts, what we really do is kind of normalize that experience for people, and we help take away some of its power. And so we've got to remember not to shy away from that topic, to do things like this and to educate people that, hey, if somebody's experiencing these thoughts, let's get that out into the open and let's talk about it, so that we can, as a community, get more comfortable just from a topical level, understanding suicide. But underneath that, if you've been struggling, if you've had thoughts about suicide, you have to reach out. You've got to be willing to talk to a loved one, to talk to a friend or a family member, maybe take advantage of a national hotline, reach out, begin working with a counselor or a therapist. There are lots of people in the United States that have struggled with suicide and suicidal thinking that are able to create change, get more emotionally healthy, and diminish some of those thoughts and some of that thinking. So if you've got a loved one that you're worried about, if you think a loved one is struggling, maybe they've talking about feeling hopeless, maybe they've made comments about being a burden to other people, maybe they've even made comments about death or dying or wanting to die. Perhaps they've maybe unusually been isolated even more than normal. Maybe they're engaging in some other reckless or negative behaviors, increased drug and alcohol use, things like that. You've got to ask them, right? You got to be willing to take that step out and ask them, hey, how are you doing? What's going on with you? Are you struggling emotionally? Specifically ask them if they've had thoughts about suicide. That way you can get that out of the dark into the light, and hopefully come up with a plan to get some help.
Once this is over, obviously we'd like to say everything just goes back to normal, but this kind of stress, does it really go back to normal? Or does this kind of, these feelings linger?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully when this COVID-19 crisis is over, we all experience some relief, right? I think what we're going to see is we're going to see some of that acute stress and anxiety, some of that in the moment stress and anxiety is going to dissipate, right? And we're going to have feelings of feeling better. I don't think that that means that everything is all of a sudden miraculously okay. Many of us are going to experience longer term effects economically, socially, emotionally. So I think that we're going to have to begin a process of planning out, what does this look like for me in terms of healing from this? No, everybody's pace is going to be different. There might be farmers and ranchers out there who that acute stress and anxiety goes away and they kind of feel an immediate bounce back to the trauma that we've experienced. That happens. For lots of us, it might take 6 months. For some of us, even a little bit longer. But working towards a plan for change is going to be what's effective. And for some people, that plan of action is only going to be a month or 3 months. For some of us, it might be a little longer, and that's okay. Everybody's going to have their own personal response to this.
Derek, appreciate the insights. Great stuff, good perspective. Owner, CEO, Blackbird Cooperative, also the host of the Chasing Sanity podcast. We appreciate that. What we're going to do now is we're going to have a premiere of an effort that we've been working on here at Farm Journal called Farm On. We know why all of this crisis is happening around us. It's spring planting season. Livestock still has to be fed. We still have work to do on the farm. So today, we'd like to introduce you to #FarmOn.
This season, rather than madness, opening days, or taking a break, the world is frozen, silenced by quarantines, isolated by distance, and edging on panic. But while work for you may have changed, out here, we're still going strong. Our season is underway. The crops will get planted, the livestock will be fed, and your food will continue to be grown. Just like it's been for generations. There's plenty to worry about. But out here, social distancing is our specialty. American agriculture farms on, today and tomorrow. for our family and yours.
You can show us what it means to hashtag FarmOn this season. Post your pictures or videos on social media by including the hashtag FarmOn, or you can text FarmOn to 31313 and include the pictures or videos there. Thanks to all of you for watching today on Farm Journal Live. Remember, if you'd like to keep up with what's going on around the world and in the agricultural industry, we're continuing to put coverage up online each and every day. You can go to agweb.com/coronavirus for the very latest. Thanks so much. Everyone stay safe.